Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Hairy Muppet. We're going to be doing a Masters level cast this game, so this is my first quote-unquote pro game that I'm going to be casting. On the bottom left we have our Terran player DoomDash. On the top right we have our Zerg player Lublin. Now I just want to get this out of the way. When I say pro, I mean Masters or Grandmasters. That's my definition of the word. If you have another definition, fair enough. Yeah. Alright, so, moving on. Got a nice amount of GLs going down for both players, so that's usually a good start to the game. This base, we haven't seen too much action on this sort. I'm just having a look. It does look like it's a, technically it's a 4v4, I believe. It's a bit, no, actually it's not a 4v4. I was trying to say it's a 4-player map, but it's not even a 4-player map because this one has a back ramp. So this is not a main for another player. This is just a sort of intermediary sort of expansion over there. PP, I assume, means please pause. I'm probably right about that. What am I doing? Production tab, there we go. There's a very, very bad start to my first Masters League game. But we're going to go on and we're going to see how it goes. So we've got a fairly standard barracks timing coming up for the Terran player. He's getting his SCV out to scout now, which is you know, not a bad timing. He sees the expansion in there, so that's going to make him pretty happy because he knows there's no sort of crazy Ling push coming out now. If there was going to be a crazy Ling push, if he got down like a 10 pool or something even smaller than that, then the first Zerglings would probably be popping out right about now. So he would see those and then he would be able to wall off and start pushing out the Marines straight away, which he's probably going to do anyway, but it's not a massive priority right now, so he's going to wall that off. He's got one gas, which is getting it in now. He's going for an orbital command. Meanwhile, the Zerg player is getting his hatchery now. We do have a bunker behind the mineral line for the Zerg expansion, so he doesn't see that, but he does see that when the drone sort of does a quick circle. So he was looking for that SCV and he's definitely found him now. So we may see a whole bunch of workers get pulled off to deal with this. We may see a first couple of Zerglings come down and deal with that. Maybe we'll even see a spine crawler around here. Spine crawler wouldn't be a bad option because there's nobody in the... There we go, there's a spine crawler coming out. So I don't know the range of this bunker, but I don't think the spine crawler is going to have too much troubles hitting this barracks. I'm not sure if it's in range. That's a very big question, but we do have a Reaper coming in now. Remember, in Heart of Swarm, Reapers are no longer that good at destroying buildings, but he is going to be giving the hatchery a few hits, and the possibility of any drones harvesting here is going to be virtually zero at this point. Meanwhile, we do have a second command center coming up for the Terran player, so he's going to go into a fairly early expansion off this harass, but look at the range on that spine crawler. So this bunker, I don't think he can hit the spine crawler from that range, so this bunker harass is not going as planned. It's pretty much going to get shut down at this point. He's going to do a bit of repair. The spine crawler, though, he can't quite reach the SCV, but the Queen manages to take out the SCV. Another SCV coming down here. They will get taken out. This Queen is on her last legs. The Reaper's going to jump up here. It's intercepted by another Queen. It's going to run by. Maybe he can take out a couple of drones, but the drones come out to meet him, and that Reaper is going to be toast. So, a very, very climatic... I was trying to think, it's like anticlimactic is when it means boring, so the opposite of anticlimactic is technically climatic, but it doesn't sound like a very good word to describe this sort of place. So we'll just say exciting for now. Got another hatchery. That's going to do a very good job at stopping run-ins, although at this stage it looks like the main thing that he was going to be sending in was Reapers. But yes, this will hold off the Marine Marauder push quite nicely, and of course provide some extra macro for the Zerg player. He's going to switch into putting out a lot of drones now. I think he's fairly happy for the next few minutes. He's not going to get attacked again by the Terran player. The Terran player is happy too. He's got his command center down. He's building up the orbital... excuse me. Building up the orbital command. Got some SCVs out there. I'm sorry, but my vocal cords are not used to casting Masters League games. They still need a little bit more practice to be able to go at this speed. So you'll have to excuse me for a sec. Just going to take a drink. That's so much better. Okay, so we do have an Infernal Pre-Igniter coming out for the factories. He's actually got 2 factories up, one with a reactor, one with a tech lab, so he's going to be building 3 Hellions at once, and that is going to be very good considering that the Zerg does have his expansion out. He is going for these Evo chambers to kind of block off the side. I thought this was actually the edge. I assume that's on the ground, but it's very disturbing because it's actually on top of the highlights, so I thought it was up in the air in a second, but I don't know. We've got 2 Lings over there just doing a scout to see if the Terran starts to move out. They're going to run in there. They're going to get a good scout off here. They see the 4 Hellions, so he knows what's going to be coming. And I would not be surprised to see him patch up the rest of this gap. Maybe another couple of Queens or something like that. Maybe a couple of Spine Crawlers moving in this gap, because right now this gap means death for these drones. So he's got to try and do something about that as soon as possible. And I'm not sure if that was done on purpose, but the drones are mining that gas onto that hatchery, so that's very interesting. And here we go, we've got 7 Hellions. They've got the Infernal Pre-Igniter, so they do a massive amount of damage. These Lings have got to be very careful. They can't just run out and meet them, because they are going to get destroyed. So they run back. They're running back. They're going to sort of try to protect this. The Hellions go through that gap I was talking about. They're going to take out all of the Lings. They're going to do massive amount of damage to the drones. They're probably talking about 3 or 4 of them. A lot more, have a lot of health left. And the drones making a massive mistake there. They were trying to run away, and then they decided not to. They came back, and they are all going to die. And that was a humongous mistake there on the part of the Zerg player. He should have kept those drones running, maybe blocked that ramp with the drones, and did the mineral trick. Now, the mineral trick, for those of you who don't know, is that if you have a bunch of drones and you click on minerals, they will go to those minerals and they will move through any units they have. So this queen could have stood on the ramp. It could have had another queen on the ramp. What I would have done, if I was as fast as the Masters player, is I would have moved this queen over there, blocked the ramp, moved the drones through the queens using the mineral trick to get them to these mineral patches. The Hellions would not have been able to follow, and I think he would have maybe lost 2 or 3 drones there instead of the 10 or 12 that he actually did end up losing. We have a look at the units lost tab. That's 40, and I would say that at least 15 of those were drones in that exchange. Probably the rest of them were Lings, and of course these 12 have mostly been made up of Hellions and the Reaper and SCV, which are taken out before. So if we have a look here, the Hellions are going to come in. They're blue flame. They're going to do another couple of attacks here. These Lings and these Banelings are going to chase them away. The Hellions are not too bad against Banelings, but still I'm guessing the Banelings are going to do a lot of damage. And of course on creep, there's a huge possibility of them just getting surrounded and then stomped out. And if they get surrounded by Zerglings, then it's so much easier for the Banelings to get in and just start massacring these Hellions. And we see Baneling speed is nearly up, so those Banelings are just going to be twice as effective from now. So the Zerglings come in, they're off the creep though, so I don't think they can catch these Hellions and corner them, and it is going to be a Zergling barbecue here. Have a look at the production tab. We've got 2 upgrades for the Zerglings, maybe for Ultralisk as well later on. We do have a Spire coming up, so maybe moving into Mutalisk, maybe into tier 3 Broodlords and Corruptors, but I would think Mutalisk for now. However, we do have a 3rd base coming out for the Terran. We do have Thors, we do have tanks on the base, so these tanks are going to do a very good job of countering the Lings and the Banelings. This Thor is going to do a very, very good job at countering the Mutas if they do come down. However, we're not seeing any Mutas on the map. There we go though, 9 Mutas, and he is deploying another Thor, so these Thors are going to be great at protecting the main army from the Mutas. So he's going for a very heavy mech army here, continuing to produce Hellions. I'm assuming he's still got that factory with the reactor, and look at that, 4 factories total, 2 armories. I would not be surprised to see double mech upgrades going on, so he's going for a oh bloody oath, he's going for a very large mech army this game, and it's not often that you see a full mech army go down. compared, Triple M is just so good and it's so easy to handle. Triple Mech is a bit harder to handle, but with the Hellbats now available and with the tanks and with the Thors for anti-air, it can definitely be made into a good build. We have this Thor and we have another Thor down here. I think that should be enough to drive off the Mutalisks here. They might take down this Thor, but they are going to take a heavy amount of damage. They are split up quite well though. He's using the magic box technique, I think, to keep them spread apart. It's basically, if you do an attack move, the Mutalisks will all converge towards that spot. But if you keep them spread out and then you just do a move command and then stop and hold position or whatever else you do over that spot, then the Mutalisks will not converge, they'll stay spread out, and of course the Thors do area of attack damage, so that's going to be very, very ineffective versus Mutas if they stay spread out. So they're going to be moving over here. He does have a couple of missile turrets already, but this is enough Mutas to take care of that. So I don't think he can produce Thors fast enough to deal with the amount of Mutalisks that he's going to have to deal with. So he may have to start looking at another option to counter this Mutalisk threat. He is switching into more Thors, but really, I mean, at this stage of the game, I don't see him being able to produce enough Thors to deal with these Mutalisks. Right now, they're just having their way with the Terran base. They're going to just destroy these armories when the upgrades is coming out, and that is just absolutely huge. He does have, excuse me, 1 weapons, and he had 1 armor and 2 weapons on the way, but those are not going to finish right now. He's got 3 more Thors coming out, and that should be enough, I think, to push these guys away. But the Thors are just so slow, and the Mutalisks are just so quick, and I don't know, in the long term, I don't see these Thors being able to push these Mutas away. I mean, he may be able to just throw down a crapload of missile turrets everywhere and be able to hold off more attacks like that, but it does depend if the Zerg player goes for a stupid amount of Mutas, like 30 or 40 Mutalisks, because then no amount of missile turrets will be able to defend that many Mutalisks, and Thors are just so slow, they cannot be everywhere at once. They can barely even be in one place at once, so this Terran is still very, very set on getting this base up and running, and that's going to be hard because the Thors have to go all the way around to defend it, and meanwhile the Mutalisks are just going to run through. And you can see when he doesn't have these Thors, he has nothing in this army that can attack air, so he's really relying on these slow Thors to be able to ward off the Mutalisks, and the Zerg player sees this. He's going to be able to produce a lot more Mutas, not a lot more, but he's going for a massive amount of Lings and Banelings, and you can just look at his creep spread there. It is absolutely phenomenal. He's pushed almost all the way to the Terran base. The Terrans are going to move out. They're going to start taking out some of this creep with the scans, but the Zerg is planning to move in here. This is a lot of missile turrets though, so but they are spaced out a little bit too much, so the Mutas can go in there and do a bit of damage. And remember, these missile turrets were upgraded. I thought they were upgraded to do more damage to light units. Apparently not. So they're going to have a bit of problems there. Oh, I'm so bad. I was focusing on the Mutas. I missed this attack. Pretty much all the Lings and all the Banelings went in there and just absolutely wiped out that Terran army. So that was a humongous attack on the part of the Zerg player. He's going to go down. He's going to take out this base. There is no ground defenses here. He really should start to work on some planetary fortresses for these outlying bases. He's got one up here. He didn't have time to get this one down here, so this one is just going to have to run out of there ASAP. The remaining missile turrets get taken out. He's not even going to bother trying to run these drones away. He's just given up on them. The Mutas are going to come in, try and take this out, but I don't think they're going to do too much. Thors are going to come in to ward them away. But so far the Zerg player is definitely on the up and up, but still here the Terran was pushing his expansions a lot harder. The Zerg has 3 expansions, working on a 4th. The Terran was actually ahead of him in expansions just before. He's shifted back now, losing this one. We have a look at the income tab. The Terran is a full 13 drones, sorry, 13 workers ahead of the Zerg. So over a long time, the Terran is going to be able to produce a lot more than the Zerg player will. And the Terran player is producing mech, so he does rely a lot more on gas than a typical Terran army would, but I think the minerals are going to help out quite a lot, especially since he's relying on so much on Hellions, which don't actually cost gas, and since he's going against Lings, which die so easily to Hellion abuse. So all he has to really worry about in terms of gas is the Thors and the tanks, and I think he should have enough to take care of those. Excuse me, Muta's going nuts on another command center, and I need another drink. So there we go, here it is, the Terran with 7 or so SCVs and a floating command center. He's going to be able to set this base up quite nicely. He's going straight into a planetary fortress this time. He's not going to screw around like last time. Mutas are flying around, trying to see what they can take out. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go into this base again. 4 missile turrets, but they can attack them pretty fast. He's got a magic box over this Thor, take it out without too many problems. This tank is going to go down as well. The missile turrets are all up here, so there might be enough to ward the mutas off. Looks like it's going to. The mutas know that the army is moving out and is going to go, and it's just going to take them out as they go. So the Terran's going to have to shift back into their base. He's got 2 Thors coming out, so that I don't know if that will be enough to hold off these Mutalisks. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But meanwhile, the Terran player is moving out here. He's going to kill some of this creep. He's probably going to start moving into this base. That base has a crap ton of workers in it, so they are all going to die unless a miracle happens in this Terran base. In this Zerg base, I should say. And I don't think the miracle is going to happen, unless maybe it's these mutas. But I mean, we've got like 5 Thors here, so I don't think mutas are going to be that good. Meanwhile, we have a slow tank sieging up here to deal with this ground army. Basically, the tactic is you don't want to clump all your tanks up, because then they run in and they all get wiped out. So you want to have a sort of train of tanks moving out, so as they're attacking the first one, the siege tanks behind it are able to still hit the front ones. But they had so many banelings, and they had such a nice concave. They had the flank from the side, they had the flank from the front, they had the 45-degree flank, and they were all over the creep. So the Terran army just did not have enough to really hold that off. He had tanks. He had about 5 or 6 tanks, but it just wasn't enough. That amount of baneling was just completely ridiculous. But you can see the Terran is already macroing up quite a lot. Well, of course, the good thing about fighting against banelings is even if you lose your army, they lose their army as well, because the banelings pretty much are dead as soon as they're used up. So the Zerg player still has to macro up again after building those. But it looks like he isn't going to build a crap ton of banelings. He's going to move into Ultralist tech, and we'll see how that goes. And you can see, with the amount of production these guys are doing, with the amount of income that they're actually getting, just how good these Masters player are by looking at their resource count. They are not above 500 in either minerals. Alright, the Terran's getting above 500 gas now. It's getting a little bit lower minerals, but there he goes, up again. So they get a crap ton of income. Income is like 1700 a minute, with about 1800 gas, and they continually spend that. They do not let it get too high. Of course, just as I say that, the Zerg player is letting his minerals get a little bit out of control, but I would not be surprised to see some Ultralists start to pop out, and those guys will chew up those resources before you know it. There we go, 3 Ultras, and he's already used up pretty much all of that stuff. So we're going to see how Ultralists do. Of course, the really good counter versus Ultralists is going to be the Marauders, and he doesn't have the Marauders. Tanks are, you know, they're not too bad. They're pretty good, but he's got to keep those tanks protected long enough to destroy the Ultras, because even with units that are good versus Ultras, they'd take quite a lot of hits. So he's got to keep these tanks protected, and of course with Lings all over the place and Mutas all over the place, that's going to be a very, very tough job. We can expect to see some flanks from here, some flanks from there, flanks from pretty much everywhere, trying to hit these siege tanks, because once the siege tanks are gone, then these Lings and these Ultras are going to do a very good job. I'm not sure how good Thors are against the Ultras, but I would think that since Thors are ranged and since the Ultralists are melee, that the Ultralists would probably be able to rip the Thors apart one-on-one once they manage to get in range. And of course, we'll just have to see. Maybe the Terran is just going to let the Zerg hit him. Let the Zerg come in where there's no creep, where the Terran player has the advantage, try and wipe out the army, and then do a push out when the Zerg is at a disadvantage in terms of army. But unfortunately, the Terran has been so good at expanding everywhere that he can't really tell too well where the Zerg is going to hit. Obviously, it's going to be the base with the most minerals left over, which right now would be this bottom one. He's trying to anticipate this base, but the Zerg doesn't know that he's taken that base yet, so he's outsmarting himself a little bit there. However, the Zerg does know it now, and it looks like he's repositioning to go in here to hit this army. The tanks are not sieged up at the moment, so that is very, very slow. The Ultras get in range, and they are going to just rip half that tank army apart. It's really, really badly. All the Banelings have gone. The Ultralists are all gone down. There's still a couple of Thors left over to hit the Mutalisks, but it's just not quite enough. There's one Thor left. That Thor is going to go down. So the Banelings and the Ultralists really did a good job at clearing up. They didn't get all the tanks down, but they didn't need to because there was no more ground army left for the Zerg to really worry about losing to the tank fire. So there's Mutalisks, just basically on cleanup duty, killed the last two Thors, and that's pretty much all she wrote. Now the tanks, the Ultralists are going to come in there, going to provide a nice shield for the Lings. They're just going to rip these tanks apart without any barrier around the tanks. Ugh. There's just absolutely no hope for these tanks to have enough time to destroy the Ultralists. They just don't have enough firepower. Nothing has enough firepower to take out an Ultralist before it closes in on that unit. It needs a buffer between it, and that's what the Hellions and that's what the Thors were doing a great job of before. But really, it's just not enough in this case. And just more Ultras coming out. He's built a crapload more Mutas as well. He's going for a greater Spire, so we may be seeing Corruptors and maybe seeing Broodlords and all that sort of stuff going on. Meanwhile, we've got a whole bunch more Thors and tanks. So he knows how valuable the Thors are now because he lost all of them and then the Mutas just started taking out everything. But look at the amount of Ultras coming in here. So he's switched over to a massive ground army. He does have some Mutas lying around somewhere. I'm not sure where they are. If they go to the units tab, sorry. He's got 12 Mutas flying around somewhere. They're just checking out for bases over there. This base got taken out. And oh, the Terran player is saying, I can't believe I let you recover after destroying all those drones at the start of the base. And it was, you know, it was a very good attack, but I wouldn't say as much of a game breaker as the Terran thinks he is, or thinks it was. But anyway, this may be a game breaker, taking out this base, because he's just going to move across to this base, and I don't see him being stopped. And I mean, look at these guys. He's got a massive army, but he just can't get out because of his. He really needs to destroy something here. He needs to lift off this barracks and just get out. Because this is just painful at the moment. All these really bulky Thors, they only got that little gap. They're going to move out. They're like, holy hell, the army's already there. But this is a crap load of Thors. They do have 3-3. And the Ultras are like, nah, you know, I don't think we're going to win this. So I'll just get out of here. The Ultras have 3-3. The Mutas only have 1 attack. No armor. So they're not going to be able to help out that much. They're relying on the Ultras to take out the Thors so the Mutas can just do the mop-up. But with this amount of SCVs out here repairing the Thors, I think this may just be the sort of army that could actually push ahead and actually finish off this Zerg player. However, we can't count out the Banelings, we can't count out the Lings. Lings are a perfect counter towards the Thors because the Thors attack so slowly. And the Banelings are very good as well. We'll just have to see. There's not that many tanks in this army. There's only 5 tanks. So I don't know if he has the numbers he needs to actually take out these Banelings and these Lings. I don't think he does. So they're going to go in and they're just going to have their way with the Thors. There are quite a bit of siege tank coming in. I think there's a couple of Hellions as well who did that. And there's just so many Thors. I think it was mostly the Thors doing damage to those Lings. They just did a fantastic job. There was a bit of flank here. But between the Thors and the siege tanks, they just did a fantastic job. And we have reached here what you would call a critical mass of Thors. So once you reach a critical mass, it's pretty much unstoppable. I mean, we did have a game once where he reached a critical mass of Overlords, and he managed to whittle them down bit by bit over a 5-minute period using Widow Mines. But I don't know how the Zerg can whittle down this mass of Thors. I just don't see it happening at the moment, especially if he starts bringing in more SCVs, which it looks like he's doing, and start repairing them up. The problem is, any unit he builds now is going to die before it reaches the Thors. He is getting some Corruptors, and he might be morphing them into Broodlords. Broodlords are a pretty good counter to the Thors, I will say. If a Broodlord gets the range, he puts all those little Broodlings down. The Broodlings actually stop the Thors from closing in. The Thors are so slow they can't move past the Broodlings, and they tend to just attack the Broodlings manually. And the Thors have a range of 10, but I believe the Broodlord's range is even longer, so we'll see. But I think it may be just a case of too late at this point for the Zerg player to kill this army off. He is, however, moving in. He's got a couple of ultras from other bases. He's going to be cleaning up here. He's got a ton more lings moving in, so the economy of the Terran player is going to go completely down the tubes. You see he's mining off one base, and when I say mining, I'm very generous in that statement. He's only got 5 guys on minerals. Meanwhile, the Zerg player is fully mining here. He's fully mining over there. So the Zerg income is just miles ahead of the Terran's income. Terran does have a bit of SCVs lying around, but I think half of them are actually repairing the Thors at the moment, so we'll see. I'm not even sure if his income is going to be enough to repair all these Thors. Maybe not. It looks like he's rapidly running out of minerals, so these Thors basically have to take out stuff, but the Thors are so slow and there's so many bases and the Zerg economy is just so good. He could probably keep building expansions around in a circle and get them up just as fast as the Thors could take them out. And it really doesn't matter, because all the Zerg has to do is take out this base and the Terran is pretty much finished. He's trying to get a wall here, but there's this little gap here, and I think that's all it's going to take for this entire base to get wiped out. He's going to get the surround on the planetary fortress with the lings, and I think that's just all she wrote for the Terran player. He's going to lose this base, and unless he tries to do something really derpy, like lifting up a building and moving it to the corner of the base where the Zerg can't see it, I don't think he's got much of a chance at the moment. So he's going to move out with his Thor army. He's going to have to take out these next bases. I don't think he's got any chance of moving back here and saving this base, but he does have to save a building and move it into the corner. Just to make sure that he can keep playing, because if he doesn't do that, if he loses all his buildings, it doesn't matter if you've got 1,000,000 Thors, you will still lose the game if you don't have any buildings. So he's got to save at least one building. It's probably going to be this one. I expect him to move this off to the corner anytime soon. Of course, the Zerg doesn't have that many air units. He's got a few Broodlords there. Broodlords have a range of 9.5. The Thors have a range of 11. So this is not, sorry, range of 10. So this is not going to be as good as I thought it would. They are going to be able to hit the Broodlords from there. So just, I think it was a slight change of range from Heart of the Swarm, or maybe not, maybe it's always been like that. But regardless, these Thors are just going to be able to do massive amounts of damage. And there we go, you can see the Punisher cannons popping up now when they actually lift up their back. That used to be the devastating pound the ground sort of attack that they used to be able to do. That's changed now. Now they have this Punisher cannon they can switch out, which does a single long distance strike, which is very good for taking out capital ships and big ships and stuff like that, as opposed to the Javelin missile launchers, which are better at taking out mutas. They do a bit more spread attack. So he's got those, had those out for the Broodlords. They worked very well. And I am not sure at all why this army isn't taking out this last Terran base. I mean, it's not, doesn't really need to, because he's not going to be able to take out these buildings. I don't think the Zerg has any air forces at all. If we look at the units tab, no, that's right, he should have saved those Corruptors. He should have had them hunting down buildings. He could have taken out this command center. He could have had his Corruptors hunting down factories flying around in the air, and I think then he would have just had to stay one step ahead of these Thors with his expansions, and he could have won the game. But unfortunately, all the Corruptors are gone. I don't think he has the ability to make them anymore. He doesn't. He has a hatchery, but he really needs something that can take out air units. He really needs to take out these buildings, because that's the only way he's going to win at the moment. And right now, I think the Zerg player throwing away those Corruptors, moving them into Broodlords, was definitely a mistake at this point. I thought they were a good counter to Thors, but apparently that range is a little bit too close than I thought it was, so it's just not going to work here. And he's actually left this alive, which is probably going to be a mistake if he's trying to wipe out the Zerg force. However, the Zerg is he going to try and defend this base? I'm not even sure anymore. Looks like he is. These Zerg forces, they might be able to do something. There are a lot of ultras, but I just don't see it. I mean, like we said, he took out 3 or 4 Thors, but it's just so many Thors. Like I said, the critical mass, he just wasn't able to break down that critical mass of Thors. He did excellent damage on the Terran player, got rid of pretty much all his bases, but he let him reach this critical mass of Thors, and once they were out there, he just had nothing left to throw at him. I mean, Banelings, aren't they good against Thors? And Zerglings are good against Thors when there's a few of them, because they can surround them, but you can't surround a huge group of Thors. It's just impossible. I'm not sure what the what the proper counter for Thors are if you're a Zerg player. Hydralisks, I definitely think would stand a fairly good chance, because their ground attack range of 7, so that's not super large. So I reckon a massive Roach Hydra army might not be that bad against the Thors. The Roaches would almost certainly all die, but the Hydras would definitely do their share of damage. Ultras are pretty good against Thors, but I mean, you saw that first battle there, all the Thors got taken out, but yeah, it's just this critical mass. It's just absolutely horrible. It's really, really hard to deal with. I think Broodlords are still a good counter, but you need a massive amount of them. And yeah, I don't know. This range really sort of messed me around. 10 range. I could have sworn that the Broodlords had longer range than the Thors, but I was wrong. And I think that if the Broodlords had a longer range, they had perfect positioning up here, so they could have done quite a lot of damage to those Thors, maybe taken out half the force without taking any damage themselves, if Mike read correctly. However, that range just just wasn't that good, and the Thors eke out the win. I wouldn't say eke out the win, because that was pretty impressive at the end, but there we go. My first Masters level game, and I think I did a pretty good job of it, so I will do more in the future. Thank you very much for watching, and this has been Hairy Muppet, bringing you all the glorious goodness of Starcraft 2 in a hopefully satisfactory manner. So I'll catch you guys later.